Hello. Welcome.
What's
You gonna
up?
say something?
What's up? What's up?
I guess we should do the obligatory Happy New Year.
Yeah, let's do it.
Happy New Year. It is another Techpedition Podcast. As you know, we do this thing every week or close to every week.
Oh,
where we
yeah.
talk about tech and general rambling, sometimes anime, sometimes other stuff. You know, we just kind of do what we want.
Yeah, man.
So, this is the start of a new year, a new season of Techpedition. We're now in season 4. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And, so how you doing, Clarence?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Hey, Brittany, Happy New Year. Yeah, man, we're starting a new season, starting a new year. Anything jump out to you from last year that you want to mention real quick before we move on into the new 2019 happenings? What was the big thing of last year?
The big thing?
And we kind of talked about it a little bit in our last Techpedition reunion cast, but
honestly, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I would say, honestly, I missed it when it came out, but I would say the biggest story probably... But didn't Breath of the Wild come out in 2018?
No, I don't think so.
It didn't?
I want to say that was last year.
Came out in 2017? Oh, wow. It came out in 2017. Oh, my
No, you
goodness.
just got your
year late.
Switch this
I
past
thought
year.
it came out early 2018. Okay, well, never mind. Nothing really jumped out at me, man. It was more of the same, really. Nvidia released new chips. They released a new GPU, but it wasn't like it was cool. I mean, the RTX thing was cool until I learned out that it was like a huge performance hit to FPS. So, like, it's kind of like anti-aliasing was 10 years ago, where you couldn't really turn it on anything.
Yeah.
Because it make your game slow down. In a couple years that'll be cool. But I don't know. What about you?
Oh, man, a lot of good games. I've been playing a lot of Assassin's Creed, but that's about it. Yet to play Red Dead, which, was a huge one from the past year. So in the games department, definitely that. I don't know. I think maybe as far as growth of the tech industry in general, I thought it was pretty good up until we started getting these trade disputes in the latter half of the year, which as we've
Let's
seen,
not go there.
yeah, well, which we've seen Apple lost their spot at the number one to Microsoft of all people, and then Microsoft has ceded that to Amazon now. So, the tech giants are not looking so great, So
Yeah, and it's not so much that that Amazon and Microsoft grew as Apple shrinking
fell.
because of the lack of their phone sales. I don't know if you had that on your docket, but they released this thing about how kind of blaming that their phone sales on people upgrading their, like, repairing their phones instead of buying a new one.
yeah.
But I think it's just because there hasn't been any significant phone upgrades.
Well, also they had the big controversy with the slowing down of the phones, which they resolved.
Throttling.
and, you know,
Yeah. Maybe that's why they're not making as much money.
Yeah. Brittany makes a good point in our chat, which is at facebook.com. Just search for Techpedition, where she's talking about PlayStation skipping E3 in this upcoming year, which is huge. A huge revelation we got in this past year. So, I don't know.
I forgot about that. But, I mean, to me, and we might have talked about this, I don't think companies need E3 anymore. Like, the developer or the publisher and the consumer now, like, even 10 years ago, it wasn't so much. But, like, now they're basically face to face. Like, you can talk directly to the developers of games. Like, the PR companies are reaching out to their consumers now. Whereas if you wanted to talk to somebody from Sony in the past, you would have to call, and maybe somebody would redirect you to somebody who knew something, or, you had to have a press number. But now you just add them on Twitter, and you can, and the Nintendo Direct thing, Nintendo's never innovative, really, but they were with their Nintendo Directs.
Yeah.
Because, I think that's the model that everybody should follow. It's like, you don't need E3, just have your presser, because 90% of the people watching it are not going to be in the room with you. They're going to be watching it on a stream, and save that money. So,
Yeah. I know it's something to getting hands-on is a big part of it, but you still can just release a demo online or things like that. So yeah, I don't think it's needed as much, maybe more for the smaller developers, the indie developer crowd, maybe, but then you have GDC for that. So I don't know. Do we really need E3? Yeah. Who knows?
I mean, I don't get me wrong. I love the spectacle. I've been to E3 twice, so I love the spectacle. I love the booth babes and the booths and the new games and like all that stuff's really cool.
The lights
and the flashing. But it's just one of those things where, for example, LA is heavily unionized. So if you bought a booth at E3, it costs you X $1,000 to rent a booth, and then you can't even set your own booth up. You have to pay union workers to come set your booth up. So you're paying them on top of paying for the booth, and it's just like it's a big pain in the butt. Like I can see why Sony is pulling out.
Yeah, and then you have other companies that actually come there, but they actually don't go to E3. They're like across the street.
Yeah,
I know Microsoft does that.
Yeah, in the 90s, the Gathering of Developers, which was like this huge independent game developer. I don't know. Some people may remember them, but that's what they used to do. Is during E3, they would have this huge party across the street, where they'd have like fire breathers and like it just like this huge like almost Renaissance fair, like I guess it would be like a post-apocalyptic Renaissance fair type vibe, and that's where they would show their games off. And it's still a fun thing, but yeah, I agree that it's not really necessary anymore.
Cool. Yeah. So from one big conference to another, a little more recently, CES 2019, man.
Yeah. Speaking of big spectacles, CES, I was really pumped for this CES because of the first time. And he says he remembers the Gathering of Developers E3 because he says I remember it because I'm old.
We all are, Andy. We all are.
Indeed, we all are. But yeah, so this CES is really significant because for the first time, AMD CEO, who is Lisa Su, is actually did the keynote. So there's interesting history here. So Jensen Huang, who is the CEO of NVIDIA, used to work at AMD. And then he left AMD, or I guess at the time it was ATI, before AMD bought them. He left ATI, founded NVIDIA, right? But one other interesting thing I found out is that Lisa Su and Jensen Huang are actually related. They're like either cousins or I think I read that he's her uncle or something.
Wow.
Like they're
That's
pretty
crazy.
closely related, which is pretty interesting if you think about it. But do we want to start off with AMD since I'm already talking about them?
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's talk about that new video card we got from them.
Okay, so they made an announcement. I sat and watched this stream while I was working, but they had really two pretty big announcements for this. The first one is they announced their next generation, I guess. Well, it's not, I wouldn't call it next generation because it comes out next month, but they announced their next GPU, which is the Radeon 7, which is interesting that they picked the number 7 because because Vega starts with V and it's the second Vega card, so it's Vega 2 VII or V2 comes out to 7. It's 7 nanometer. It's on a 7 nanometer process. It comes out February 7th, and it's also $700. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting. But anyway, this is AMD's return to the high-end GPU market. I believe their last high-end GPU was the Radeon Fury X was their last high-end GPU, and that GPU came out quite a while ago. I want to say it came out like 5-6 years ago. It was a long time ago. Let's see here, release date. It came out in 2015. Wow, that wasn't that long ago.
So was that a step above the last few Vegas, or? So
like the Fury X. So they had the R9 series, which was like the R9 390 and whatnot. So it's really weird because they've been using the same like base architecture which is called Graphics Compute Next, GCN. They've been using that same architecture since the 7900 series, which was like 2000, I want to say like 2011, 2012. The 7970 came out, which was like, when it came out, it was like the most powerful GPU ever, which if you've been following AMD lately, that's a pretty big deal because they haven't had the most powerful GPU or anything really in quite a while.
Yeah.
But they basically been iterating on this technology. The R9 series came out after that, and then the Fury X series, the Fury series came out. So there was the R9 Fury X, there was the R9 Nano, which was like a miniaturized version of that. And then after that, they did I almost said RTX. They did the RX card. So you had the RX 480 and the RX 470. And since they've released the RX 580, RX 570, which is basically the same GPU with like minor, I think they did some minor power consumption enhancements, but it's pretty much the same thing. You could actually crossfire. If you know anything about crossfire SLI, you can't really do it unless the cards are the same. You can actually crossfire a RX 470 and RX 570. So that just cool. Tell you they're pretty much the same card. Yeah. And then this year, this December, they released the RX 590, which is basically another optimization of the same technology. But these have been like low to mid range cards, 1080p powerhouses basically. But if you know anything about computer gaming, like we're past 1080p. For the most part, as far as like on the high end, you have 2K, which is 1440p, and you have 4K, which is like 2160p, I think. But they haven't really had anything in that space that has been competitive with NVIDIA. So this was a huge announcement. Just taking it at base level, it was a huge announcement just that they have a card in this like price range, like the $700 to $1,000 price range. They haven't had a card in forever, so. That was a pretty huge announcement. They did some.
Well, let me ask you. This is their stab at 4K gaming, right? Now, talk a little bit about what's available on the Intel side or the NVIDIA side. I'm sorry.
Okay, so 4K gaming.
What's the equivalent?
So basically, take 4 1080p screens, just to simplify it. 1080p resolution is like pushing that with max graphics. It's not a insignificant thing. Like if you have Definitely a graphics card in your machine that can play 1080p games higher than 60 frames a second, like that's a pretty, that's a pretty decent card. But what we're doing is we're taking that and we're basically multiplying it by 4.
Yes.
So that's how many pixels you're pushing. So you need significantly more powerful hardware. And even in the PC space, this has been something sort of a holy grail because it's just been so difficult to do with that amount of pixels, manufacture something that can meet that fill rate. So this recently, NVIDIA released the RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti cards. Those were a big deal. The ray tracing thing was kind of hyped, but it ended up
definitely hyped.
If you turn ray tracing on, you don't get high frames a second, which was a deal breaker for me, which is why I canceled my 2080 Ti pre-order because I'm like, if I can't play the games, I'm not going to spend $1,100 for a graphics card to play at 30 frames a second. I'm just not going to do it. I don't care who made the card. But so you have that. The previous generation, you had the 1080 Ti, which can play some games in 4K, but you're going to be reducing graphical settings. You're not going to have anti-aliasing on. But the interesting thing is you don't really need anti-aliasing. You don't really need it at like 2K and 4K. You're not going to get like super, super jaggies. You'll notice them a little bit, but you can easily, like I have my anti-aliasing turned off. Like I play a lot of Rocket League and I could probably play Rocket League anti-aliased in 40p, but I normally turn it off just because I want the frames. But those are pretty much the two cards, the 2080 and the 2080 Ti. Now the 2080 is basically a 1080 Ti with RTX hardware, and there's something called a deep learning super sampling, which is basically it's kind of weird to describe it, but basically they have like these huge like cloud compute supercomputers, and basically they figure out how to render the games, and for some way they can transfer that information to the card to make it run faster.
Is that actually being utilized, Eddie? Because
I think there's like 2 games that use it.
That sounds like the stuff Microsoft was trying to do a couple of years back.
I think there's like 2 or 3 games that use it, but that's actually really cool. Like in some games, they're saying you could see up to a 30% performance increase just from having the deep learning models that are run by the supercomputer, having those models transferred to your card. It will help it run faster. So, wow. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Interesting.
I'm not really sold on the RTX part, but the DLS is pretty cool. And basically that's it. So, enter the Radeon 7. So the Radeon 7, I have the specs pulled up here. It's on the 7 nanometer process, which is basically a die shrinkage. Your GPU processor die is it's smaller. So when it's smaller, that means it's easier to cool. That means it's more power efficient because it's less transistors, less silicon. You're not gonna need as much power to run it. So basically, you can push it harder, and it's easier to cool. So therefore, you should be able to get better performance even from just a die shrinkage, which this is. This isn't they didn't re-architecture their graphics card. This is just basically the Vega 1 die shrunk. And it has 3,840 stream processors. That's whatever. It has 16 gigabytes of memory on it.
Yeah.
So a $700 graphics card with 16 gigabytes of memory, that is not insignificant. But what makes this even more significant is that it's using high bandwidth memory. And I guess really the only thing you need to know about high bandwidth HBM too is that it's pretty expensive to manufacture. And basically you have to have it pretty close to your GPU die. So basically if you look, there's some pictures of it without the heatsink on it, and you see the big die, and there's like 4 little silver like squares around the GPU processor or die, whatever you want to call it. That's the HBM. It's generally really, really close to the actual processor or the processing units. And basically what that's going to enable them to do is have 1 terabyte per second of memory bandwidth. And the cool thing about this is that they'll be able to push the graphics information a lot harder. So whereas like even the 2080 Ti, the $1,100 2080 Ti only has 660 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. The NVIDIA equivalent as far as like the memory and the memory bandwidth is like a $6,000 card. So that's pretty cool.
Definitely one thing.
One thing they'll be able to do with that though is take that 4K gaming experience a little further, because they'll be able to move more information basically through the graphics card. I mean, that's what it boils down to. They showed a few demos of some stuff running in 4K. Yeah. And generally, graphics cards choke. One of the reasons they choke on 4K is just because there's so much information going through the card that that's one of the limitations. So they're basically removing that bottleneck. So we should see improved performance, even though this card isn't necessarily as powerful as the 2080 Ti. It should be able to, post better 4K numbers, equal or better than the 2080. I guess that's what it boils down to. I mean, it's not revolutionary. I'm not going to sit here and act like this is like the, like the sliced bread of graphics, because it's not. I mean, it's iterative. It's basically, they've taken what was the last one come out? 2015? They've basically taken 4 years to release a product that is equivalent to the second most powerful NVIDIA product right now. But, I mean, if you're like me, like a lot of people just been waiting for AMD to have something competitive in the high-end space. Like, for me, example, if they would have had a counterpart or a equivalent to the 1080 Ti, I would have gotten that instead of getting the NVIDIA, because I love AMD and I like supporting what they do. They didn't have anything. So they missed out on a lot of sales because of that. So maybe this is their, re-entry into that market to try to get some of that market share back.
So how does those price points compare to the second best card on the NVIDIA side?
The second best card, the 2080, the MSRP is $699. However, there's a caveat to that. So the first caveat is, if you go on Newegg right now and look for 2080, you might find 1 or 2 that are $699. Most of them are going to be like $850. basically, there's a Founders Edition 2080 Ti made by NVIDIA. That one is $799. And the reason that one's more expensive is because they bend the chips. They take the best chips, the best performing chips, and they put those in the Founders Edition, and they charge more. And basically, if you get a $699 2080, you're getting like the second tier 2080 chips. I mean, it's still going to be really, really fast, but you're not getting a top tier 2080 card, which is funny to say for a card that costs $700, but that's just kind of how they do things. And, that's how basically all chip manufacturers operate, is they have their high-end brands like Quattro on the NVIDIA side. And then AMD has their high-end workstation graphics. And basically, those are the most expensive cards. We're talking thousands of dollars. They basically test their chips, and the best ones go to that. And then the ones that can't quite cut that higher tier, they create another SKU that's a little less powerful. And then they turn those cores or whatever off, the compute units off that aren't working on that card for the higher end, and then they make a lower SKU card, and then it just trickles down, and that's how they come up with their different models. So I guess that's how it is. Yeah, I'm excited though. I'm excited just for AMD having something competitive. Oh yeah. Hopefully they release something. It'd be cool to see them release something that's competitive with the 2080 Ti, but I mean, maybe that's asking too much right now. Maybe it's just soak in
all in due time.
The competition.
All in due time. So
I just talked a lot. I apologize.
No, you're fine, because that was all good information. Now, I know you probably want to talk about the Intel stuff too. Am I right?
I didn't really see. I know they released some new information on their processors, but it didn't seem like they released too much information to me. I didn't watch the press conference. Yeah. So,
well, before we get into that, I'll go ahead and talk about the rollable TV, rollable screen TV, which is the LG OLED TV R, which
Please
is.
Tell me there's a video.
There is a video. So this is a television that has a base, a box rectangular like base. And the television actually will roll completely in the base. Now, the base also has speakers. It has Dolby Atmos speakers built inside of it, but it does roll completely inside the base, and it's kind of crazy. So how this kind of works is that there's if you can think of a bar system in the back of the base that kind of rolls out to bring the screen up. So they have that on. Are you watching the video?
Yeah.
I mean, cool. It's pretty crazy. Some of the things the TV can do is that if you just want to look at weather and things like that, more informational things, you can change how far it comes up. So maybe it just pops up far enough to watch the weather. I think it's cool. It's like the equivalent of, I heard somebody else say this, of back in the past, we had the big televisions in the cabinets where you just close the cabinet and the television was gone. It's kind of the modern day equivalent to that. I don't see a price on here. It's going to be ridiculously expensive, as we well know. But it's
yes, it will.
But it is a 65-inch OLED TV. Just crazy. And it's supposed to be available this year, which is just crazy to me.
Man, I'm just trying to catch up on the OLED stuff, and they got freaking rollable TVs. It's I'm never going to catch up.
And a bit of funny, I guess, part of this story that came out, and I'm reading the Engadget article. LG claims the set is good for 50,000 rolls.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's kind of where we at.
Well, my TV is good for 60,000 rolls. Therefore, my TV is better. I can just hear somebody having that conversation.
Yeah. So another thing about this television, and we can transition this into some more stories that I have, is that, Apple are opening up the technology that they've mostly put in their Apple TV to this point. So this TV will have AirPlay, and I think we'll also have,
they're pulling a Roku.
Yeah. So it's going to have AirPlay and also have iTunes, so you can actually buy Apple content on this LG TV, and then also Samsung and other third-party companies are adopting the Apple system within their televisions, which I think is pretty cool. Why?
Very nice.
Why is Apple doing
they
this?
haven't done that before now. Like,
I mean, if they're going to bolster their own television service, their own Apple streaming service, which we've been hearing about for a while now, I think this is the right thing to do. It's sort of like the equivalent of them releasing iTunes on the PC. It's just more people that have, smart TVs these days. And why not do it,
More monies. More monies.
Definitely.
Nothing wrong with more monies.
But yeah, that's Apple technology is slated to debut on newer TVs starting this year as well. So yeah, some good TV news coming out of CES.
Right on. I see you posted the Vive Cosmos thing? To me, that looks like just a Windows mixed reality headset. Like the controllers and everything. I never see them use the term Windows mixed reality, but it looks exactly like one. What do you think?
We can say that the Vive, I mean, you actually demoed or bought for a little while the mixed reality headset from, was it Samsung? Not Samsung.
I think I had the Lenovo one.
Lenovo. So we know that they have this inside out technology, but with this Cosmos, this new version of the HTC Vive, not HTC, the HTC Vive is slated to possibly connect to a PC, maybe to a console, maybe even to a smartphone.
Yes.
It's kind of what they're saying here. One of the things that I saw a demo of it. One of the things I saw was that it's supposedly does a better job of tracking your eyes, or it does some eye tracking technology. So it has the ability, like when you're in the virtual world and you're looking at something, to make it look more natural by maybe putting a blur and putting more focus on the exact thing you're looking at. Mm-hmm. So like if you're in a car in the virtual reality and you look at the car stereo, it has the ability to focus more on that. So it makes the experience a little more believable. Again, like inside out tracking, no more satellite receivers across the room to kind of tell
Light
where
boxes.
you're going. Yeah. So I think it's pretty cool, man. I think it's pretty cool. We do need to keep moving this technology along, It's been kind of stagnant for a couple of years now, I guess. We just got better screens on the latest versions.
Yeah, they just bumped up the resolution, basically, is what they did with the newer one. Which isn't a insignificant thing, but it's just like, one thing that I thought was really cool about the Cosmos is that not only does it have the two front cameras, it actually has two on the side as well.
Yes,
because
cool.
one of the problems that I ran into with the Windows mixed reality set is that it just has the two on the front. So if you're flailing your arms around, like the tracking, like if you move like this, the hand just stops right here, and like when the camera picks up the one again, it'll just move. But this looks like you'll be able to get like a full range of motion. And the head tracking should be better because it's got two more cameras. And I believe you can adjust the IPD, the interpupillary distance, which is something I couldn't do on the Lenovo Explorer, which basically made it usable for me because my IPD didn't match what the headsets was. I don't even know how you can have that fixed on.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
But, so I'm really excited about this. I hope it's not like $800. I hope it's like affordable, but we'll see.
Yeah, I guess they're also touting like ease of setup. I never really set one of these up, so I don't know actually how hard they are. So hopefully this is just another step to make this more of a reality, and bring more people in.
Yes, sounds like a good idea to me.
Cool.
Okay, what else we got?
What else do we have here? We talked about TVs. I would talk about Google, but they just announced a bunch of voice assistant stuff that, their assistant, they're basically trying to pull an Alexa and put their assistant everywhere. Is
Google.
What it boils down to, in TVs, in Sonos, in Dish, they are pimping their assistant basically. So yeah, not a lot to say there, I guess.
Let's going to talk about. Intel demonstrates 10 nanometer Ice Lake processor.
They finally got their 10 nanometer yields. Like, yeah, they've been like super behind on 10 nanometer. They've been on 14 nanometer forever since like Skylake, which was like the 60s. No, Skylake was. It's been a couple years. They've been on the same technology since 2015, which basically, it's like they basically been reusing the same architecture over and over again, adding more cores and bumping up clock speed. Kind of the same thing AMD was doing with their graphics cards. They've been doing with their CPUs, but in their defense, they didn't really have an incentive to innovate because AMD didn't really have a competitive CPU either. The Bulldozer architecture before the Zen architecture was just not very good. So it's cool to see. It's cool to see AMD getting their feedback on them because it's making Intel, move their feet as well.
Yeah.
They've been on 14 nanometer forever, so it's significant in that regard because, like I said, we should get some more of those efficiencies, better performance. Thunderbolt 3, like that's the only thing I hate about not having an Intel box is that you don't for now, you don't get Thunderbolt. And Thunderbolt is amazing. It's basically like
I
do recording, so like USB just introduces latency. So
the 3 has gotten a little faster, hasn't it? Though with the USB 3,
3 is like USB 3 is faster, but it's not
still not Thunderbolt
fast. Thunderbolt 3 is like insanely fast. Let me see. Thunderbolt 3 speed. It's really fast. Okay, USB 3.0's limit is 5 gigabits per second. Thunderbolt 3 can do 40.
Oh, wow.
And that's with zero latency because it uses a PCI Express lane. There's no latency. So, like, if you're recording something, it's zero latency. It's like USB, just by its nature and its architecture, it introduces, like, some milliseconds of latency. So that was one of the reasons I was really interested in it. But the other cool thing is you can have one USB-C plugged in, like, from my Mac. For example, I plug in one USB-C Thunderbolt cable and I plug it into, it's a breakout box. And from that one USB plugged into my computer, I can do power, I can do HDMI, I can have some more USBs, for other devices. I can have Ethernet, that's just how much higher bandwidth it is. You can just run everything through that one cable.
That's freaking cool.
So, yeah. That's really awesome. I would hope that at some point AMD adopts it, but I don't know. It's not looking good.
Yeah. Like another thing from this Verge article, Ice Lake is an important step for Intel for Intel after years of 10 nanometer delays and struggles. Intel originally planned to introduce the 10 nanometer processors dubbed Cannon Lake back in 2016. Good Lord. Yep. And their latest earnings report revealed that this year would be the year they're going to debut them. And it looks like they're holding true to that. So yeah. Yeah.
Very, very exciting. Very exciting.
Tech happenings.
Competition is a good thing, man. Regardless of which company you root for, it's good to have two competitive companies because if you don't, you get what Intel's been for like the last 5 years or what NVIDIA's been for the last 5 years. They don't really have an incentive to push the envelope, and you get somebody like AMD who's desperate to break through, so they offer good performance at competitive prices, and it just shakes everything up, and I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah. So is there anything else you saw at a CES that kind of piqued your interest?
Yeah, I mean, there's one more AMD thing. I kind of feel like an AMD show right now, but it's just they also kind of like teased their third generation Ryzen their Zen 2 CPU. And the architecture of the CPU is actually pretty interesting. And okay, so the top Intel consumer part is the i9-9900K. It's 8-core, 16-thread, high instructions per clock, best performance, not best performance for $1, but best raw performance that you can get for like less than $1,000, basically. I think it's like $540, $600. It's like $500-$600 somewhere in there. So anyway, there were rumors that the new Ryzen CPU is going to be 16 core, 32 thread. Like that was the hype, is that they're going to release a consumer chip with 16 cores, 32 threads, which is insane.
Yeah, it
and
really is.
Like I kind of didn't want to believe it because I didn't want to disappoint myself. But you know, they showed the chip. The chip that they were running benchmark comparisons against the i9-9900K was 8-core, 16 thread. So it was kind of a letdown. I was like, blah. But there is hope. So okay, so as you know, this is moving down to 7 nanometer. It's a minimum of 15% performance jump from Zen Plus, which is the Ryzen 2 chips. And the really cool thing about it is it's less power, and because this is a completely new architecture. This isn't just the die shrink of the original first generation Ryzen. You get higher instructions per clock. So you know this chip next to the i9-9900K, and it actually beat it, and it used less power. And they haven't even finalized the clock speed yet. So that's really, really encouraging that, you know, identical systems.
Yeah.
Everything's identical. They run Cinebench. It finishes first on the AMD box. You know, it wasn't a huge lead, but it was a lead. But I'm going to tell you why that's highly encouraging. Number one, the way they've architectured this CPU, they use something called chiplets. I don't know if you see the picture that they show of the CPU die. It's at the top of the article. But basically, there's an I/O chip, which is basically that one is still 14 on the 14 nanometer process.
This is crazy.
It's basically the RAM controller, and basically anything that wouldn't have benefited from the die shrink, they kept it at 14 nanometers, and they made basically a I/O chiplet. And basically the CPU cores, and they're actually on a separate chiplet. So you see like a big one and a small one. The big one's the I/O, and the small one's actually the 8 cores and 16 threads. And if you look at that chip, the interesting thing is they could fit another one of those chiplets on there.
They really could.
They can still do the, you know, I'm holding out hope that they still release a 16 core, 32 thread consumer part. And I'm going to tell you why this is significant, because they're using this same architecture, the Zen 2 architecture, on their EPYC, which is their server grade CPU. And there's also something called Threadripper, which is very similar to EPYC. And the problem that I had with the first generation and second generation Threadripper, they were ridiculous. Like there's a 32 core, 64 Threadripper CPU. It's like $1,700 or something. But the problem is it basically has 4 dies on it. 4 Zen 1 dies. And the problem is only 2 of those dies have direct memory access. If the other 2 want to pull, you know, if they want to do something with memory, they have to go through the other die. So it introduces latency, and it's just not inefficient. It kind of cripples the chip. But since they've broken the cores out from the other stuff, basically that big I/O chip is the memory controller. And each of the chiplets will have direct access to memory through that interconnect. So it's actually going to make that, you know, it's going to bring down that latency and make it just that much more efficient. So it's kind of a big deal. And because of the shrink, it's going to consume less power as well. So this one's going to be a big deal, I think. Especially now that their performance is on par with the Intel parts. This could be the year that they make that jump, you know, to where, because if you remember, like when, you know, AMD basically invented 64-bit chips.
Yes.
Like Intel actually licenses AMD's 64-bit chip patent to make their chips. So this could be that level of significance for AMD. Because like when AMD 64 came out, they were the best. So, you know, this could, you know, especially if they throw another chiplet in there and make it a 16 core, 32 thread processor, like it could put them back on top easily.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around why it's better to have the I/O broken out.
Well, because if the IO's included, well, there are two reasons. The first reason is those parts wouldn't have benefited from the die shrink.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Making those
At 14
parts
nanometers.
smaller, yeah, making those parts smaller wouldn't have actually made the chip any faster or efficient. Plus, you would have had to have one of those for each of those chiplets. So basically, they pulled all that stuff out and they made the chip as small as they could, or the core chiplet as small as they could. And actually, they have something called Infinity Fabric. I don't know if they're using Infinity Fabric for this, but it's a high-speed interconnect. I'm assuming that that's how they're connecting the chiplets to the I/O chip. So it just
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, the fact that they're breaking it out, I do see the benefits of them down the line to allow adding another chiplet to utilize its same I/O core. I can see the benefits there, definitely. Instead of replicating that like they would before.
Yeah, just think about like Threadripper and Epic, the actual processor chip. It's like twice the size of that. So just think about how many of those chiplets they can fit on there.
Yeah. If there's no bottleneck with the I/O, I would think at a certain point it would, be diminishing returns, but
they'll all have direct, like the cool thing to me is like they'll all basically have direct memory access. So you won't run into those problems with, the chip or the core finding a path to memory. It was so weird. They had to actually do something in the OS with Threadripper to get it to work correctly, because there was two ways you could get it to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to remember what the two ways were. One of them, I think, was to actually assign the chips that didn't have direct memory access. You could assign those to one of the ones that did and have them act as like two separate CPUs. So in your OS, it would look like you had two CPUs instead of just one. And somehow that made it work. I don't know. It's just kind of a headache. That's one reason I wasn't that interested in Threadripper, is because of that.
And is this slated for 2019?
Yeah, this is coming out this year.
Oh wow!
So, I didn't even mention the fact that this chip, as amazing as it is, I can take this chip, drop it in my computer.
Okay,
it's AM4,
same socket.
It's AM4, just like the Ryzen system or the Ryzen motherboard that I have that's 2 years old. It's running on the same socket. So I just drop my CPU and my motherboard. I might have to do a BIOS update or something and good to go. Don't have to buy a new motherboard, no new RAM or anything. So like that's the other cool thing about buying AMD, is that you don't really have to invest in anything else. If you have a semi-recent system, you don't really have to worry about buying another motherboard or whatever. So it's a nice bonus, I guess.
Sweet. Coolness, man.
I'm really excited, if you hadn't noticed.
Well, hopefully if we get this, I'm not announcing anything, but if we get this video review show going, you may be able to demo some of that stuff.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to maybe in a couple months. Right now I'm trying to decide whether or not I'm going to try to hawk my 1080 Ti and pick up a Radeon 7. I know I'm not getting a 2080 or 2080 Ti just because.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But I would like to maybe see if I could get a Radeon 7 just to benchmark it and compare it to the Ti. I think that would be a really cool thing to do for the podcast and for the site. And just see which one, duke it out with the 1080 Ti, see which one wins. I think that'd be fun.
Sweet. Well,
so we got anything else?
I don't think there's anything else out of CES that just jumped out at me as need to talk to. I'm sure the next week we'll have some more things that pop up that we'll want to mention in the next show. But other than that, I think I'm good. What about you, man?
One thing I will say is in the press conference, Lisa Su actually brought Phil Spencer from Microsoft out for the Xbox.
Wink, wink.
And she talked to him a little bit about like what they're doing in their partnership, and basically they didn't really say anything about the next system, but they kind of teased it a little bit.
Did AMD do Scorpion?
Yeah, they did. AMD did 1X. They did Project Scorpio. Yeah, it's running on AMD GPU.
Interesting.
And the funny thing is, like, AMD owns the console market basically.
Yeah.
I mean, basically everything but like the Switch, which is running on NVIDIA Shield, is basically NVIDIA Shield. I mean, I don't mean that as an insult. It's running off the exact same hardware as NVIDIA Shield. Just about everything else is running off AMD stuff.
Yeah.
The PlayStation 4, the Xbox One S, the Xbox One X, they're all running AMD CPUs and GPUs. So, something to think about.
Oh yeah. Cool. Well, man, anything, I guess we're getting ready to wrap up. So, anything you want to plug before we get out of here or talk about?
Not really. Just join us next week. Looking forward to getting on and talking some more tech. Do you want to plug anything?
Yeah, real quick, just check us out on our other podcasts at Discussing Network, where we talk about comics, Trek and Doctor Who. That's about it. Oh, yeah.
Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year, guys. Join us next week.
Very, very quick. Techpedition. Very, very quick. Techpedition. Very, very quick. Techpedition. Very, very quick. Techpedition.
I can't beat that. I just smells burnt and dusty.
Hey guys, don't miss an episode of the Techpedition Podcast. For more information, go to techpedition.com/subscribe. TECHPEDITION.com.